the friendship architect. She had no idea that her best friend was actually working for me. Those words still feel strange coming out of my mouth even now. Like I'm confessing to some elaborate heist or describing the plot of a movie instead of my own life. But that's exactly what happened. I orchestrated what might be the longest, most patient revenge in the history of broken marriages. And I don't regret a single day of it. Let me back up a bit. My name is Daniel. For 15 years, I was married to Rebecca. Becca to her friends, Bex only to me. We had what I thought was the perfect life in our suburban Minneapolis home. 2 kids, Ellie and Max, now 13 and 10. A golden retriever named Scout who sheds everywhere but is too lovable to scold. I run a successful architectural firm specializing in sustainable commercial buildings, which meant long hours but also the financial freedom to give my family everything they could want. Everything except, apparently, my full attention. That's what Becca told me anyway, the first time I caught her texting someone at 2 a.m. "You're always wrapped up in your projects, Daniel," she said, her voice a perfect blend of defensiveness and accusation. "Sometimes I just need someone who actually listens." I believed her, made promises to do better. Started coming home earlier, planning date nights, the whole redemption arc of a husband who realizes he's been taking his wife for granted. For 6 months, I thought things were improving. Then I found the second phone. It was hidden in her yoga bag, one of those prepaid models. Seeing it felt like having ice water injected directly into my veins. I knew instantly what it was for, but part of me, the part still desperately clinging to our 15 years together, needed proof. The messages were explicit, not just sexually, though there was plenty of that, but emotionally explicit, intimate in ways that hurt worse than any physical betrayal could. His name was Andrew. He was the CFO at the hospital where Becca worked in human resources. They'd been seeing each other for almost 2 years. 2 years. That night, sitting alone in my car in the parking garage at work because I couldn't bear to go home and pretend everything was normal, I had what my therapist would later call a moment of clarity. But it didn't feel like clarity. It felt like a fever dream. My thoughts racing so fast they blurred together, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to rage or beg or make dramatic accusations. She'd just deny it, minimize it, twist it around until somehow I was the villain in this story. No, I wanted the whole truth. Every text, every rendezvous, every lie she told me while looking me in the eyes. And I wanted it documented so thoroughly that there would be no wiggle room, no gaslighting, no tearful manipulations. I needed help, professional help. That's how I met Zoe. She wasn't a private investigator, not officially. She had worked as a paralegal specializing in divorce cases before starting her own personal information consulting business. Her website was deliberately vague, but the testimonials told me everything I needed to know. Our first meeting was at a coffee shop 30 miles from my house just to be safe. Zoe wasn't what I expected. No trench coat or world-weary cynicism. She was maybe 30, with a practical bob haircut and the kind of warm, open face that makes people want to confide in you. Perfect for her line of work, I realized. "So," she said after I'd stumbled through my story, "you want evidence for a divorce?" I nodded, then hesitated. "Yes, but there's more to it than that." "There usually is," she replied, sipping her Americano. "I want to know everything," I said. "Not just who and when and where. I want to know what she tells him about me, about our marriage, our children. I want to know if she's planning to leave, or if she's just enjoying having both worlds." Zoe studied me for a moment. "That's going to require more than standard surveillance." "I know. I assume you've considered the obvious approaches, checking her phone records, email, social media." I explained about the burner phone, how careful Becca had been, how she'd always been the tech-savvy one in our relationship, likely to notice any spyware or unusual account logins. Zoe tapped her fingers on the table. "There's another approach, but it's unconventional, more personal, more time-intensive, and frankly, more expensive." "I'm listening." What if instead of trying to hack into their communications, I became part of her life? A new friend? Someone she trusts enough to confide in? I stared at her. You want to befriend my wife? How would that even work? Zoe's plan was both simple and intricate. She would create a backstory as a recently divorced woman new to the area. She joined the same yoga studio where Becca attended classes 4 times a week. She'd do research on Becca's interests, from her favorite authors to her political leanings, and use that to form an authentic-seeming connection. People in affairs need confidants, Zoe explained. They're carrying around this huge secret, living this double life. It's psychologically taxing. If I position myself as someone who understands, who doesn't judge, she'll talk. They always do. I felt a chill run through me. There was something so calculated about it, so manipulative. But wasn't that exactly what Becca was doing to me? Calculating her responses, manipulating my trust, playing me for a fool? How long would this take? I asked. 3 months minimum. 6 would be better. Real trust takes time. 6 months of continuing to live with her, sleep beside her, pretend I didn't know. 6 more months of lies, both hers and now mine. What about the ethical considerations? I asked, already knowing I was going to say yes. Zoe looked at me steadily. I don't seduce people. I don't encourage them to cheat if they aren't already. I don't manufacture evidence. I simply provide a trusted ear and document what I learn. The rest is between you and your attorney. I hired her that day, paid the first month's retainer in cash. One more thing, I said as we were about to part ways. Make sure you find out if she loves him. Zoe gave me a look of genuine sympathy. Are you sure that's something you want to know? Need, not want. I managed a bitter smile. There's a difference. The first month was the hardest. Zoe, now going by the name Maya, coincidentally met Becca at Hot Yoga Lab, the boutique studio where Becca went religiously every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Their friendship progressed exactly as Zoe had predicted. Casual hellos, then coffee after class, then texts about good Netflix shows. Meanwhile, I was living in my own private hell. Every night I'd come home and kiss Becca hello, ask about her day, knowing she was editing out significant portions. Every morning, I'd wake up next to her, sometimes even make love to her, all while wondering if she was thinking of him. The cognitive dissonance was so severe I started getting migraines. I met with Zoe, always careful, always at least an hour's drive from home, once a week for updates. The first few were frustrating. Becca was friendly but guarded. She talked about the kids, about work in general terms, about her annoying sister-in-law, but nothing about Andrew or any hint of dissatisfaction in our marriage. She's testing the waters, Zoe assured me. Building a friendship takes time. I've planted seeds about my own failed marriage and how liberating honesty feels. She'll open up. By the second month, Becca and Maya were proper friends. Getting manicures together, meeting for lunch downtown. She'd even mentioned bringing Maya to our annual block party. She's starting to talk, Zoe reported during one of our meetings. Not about the affair specifically, but about your marriage. She said you've been weirdly attentive lately, and she's not sure how to feel about it. I barked out a laugh. Weirdly attentive, because trying to save my marriage is weird. She also mentioned feeling guilty about something, but then quickly changed the subject. We're getting close. The breakthrough came in month 3. Becca invited Maya over for wine while I was supposedly out of town at a conference, though I'd actually taken a hotel room just 30 minutes away to maintain the illusion. That night, lubricated by Pinot Noir and the false intimacy of a girls' night in, Becca confessed to the affair. Zoe recorded it all. Not just the admission, but the justifications. The way Becca framed herself as the victim of a cold workaholic husband. How Andrew made her feel seen and appreciated in ways I supposedly never had. How the passion between them was unlike anything she'd experienced before. Listening to the recording later, alone in my sterile hotel room, I vacillated between rage and despair. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a list of complaints and inadequacies. the mother of my children giggling like a teenager as she described sneaking around with her lover. But the worst part, the absolute knife twist, was when Zoe asked, "Do you love him?" There was a pause on the recording. I held my breath. "Yes," Becca said finally. "I think I do, but it's complicated with the kids. And financially, Daniel's business is doing so well right now. That night, I nearly called the whole thing off. Nearly drove home, packed a bag, told Becca I knew everything. But something stopped me. A kernel of cold calculation that had been growing inside me since I found that phone. I realized I didn't just want evidence for a divorce. I wanted the complete picture. And more than that, I wanted justice. So the operation continued. Month 4 brought a new level of intimacy between Becca and her new confidant. Becca showed Maya the secret communication app she used with Andrew, shared the code phrases they used when texting about meeting up, admitted that they sometimes met during her lunch breaks at a small apartment Andrew kept downtown, separate from his actual condo, specifically for their rendezvous. By month 5, Becca trusted Maya enough to actually include her in the deception. Once when Becca claimed to be having dinner with the girls from work, she was actually meeting Andrew, with Maya tagging along as lookout and alibi provider. "I don't know how you can do this," I told Zoe during one of our meetings. "How you can smile and laugh with her, knowing what she's doing to me, to our family." Zoe's professional demeanor slipped slightly. "It's not easy," she admitted, "especially since meeting your kids. They're great children, and they clearly adore both of you." I'd been keeping it together fairly well until she mentioned Ellie and Max. "They have no idea," I said, my voice breaking. "If they knew what their mother—" "They won't find out from me," Zoe assured me. "And for what it's worth, Becca does love them. She talks about them constantly. I think in her mind she's compartmentalized this whole thing. The affair exists in a separate universe from her family life. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, just giving you the full picture, like you asked for." As we approached the 6-month mark of our arrangement, I had to make a decision. I had more than enough evidence for any divorce court in Minnesota to rule in my favor. Text transcripts, photos, audio recordings of Becca's own confessions, details of their meeting places, the exact timeline of their relationship. I could end this now, confront Becca, file for divorce, begin the messy process of disentangling our lives. I'd get primary custody. The evidence of her deception was too overwhelming for any judge to ignore. I'd keep the house. We'd sell the vacation property in Wisconsin. Standard dissolution of assets for a marriage of our duration. But something felt incomplete, unsatisfying. The thought of Becca and Andrew continuing their relationship, perhaps even building a life together after our divorce, made my blood boil. She would frame herself as the woman who bravely left her neglectful husband for true love. He would be the gallant savior who rescued her from a loveless marriage. Their narrative disgusted me. That's when I had the idea. An idea so perfect, so poetically just, that it made me laugh out loud when it came to me. I called Zoe immediately. "I want to extend our arrangement," I said, "and I want to modify it." "I'm listening." "Our 15th wedding anniversary is in 4 months. I want to wait until then for the confrontation." "May I ask why?" "Because I'm going to give her the performance of a lifetime. I'm going to make her believe that everything is perfect between us, that I've never been more in love with her. I'm going to plan an elaborate anniversary surprise, and that's when I'll reveal everything I know." There was a long pause on the line. "Daniel, I understand the impulse, but is that really the healthiest approach?" "Probably not," I admitted, "but it's what I need, and I need your help to make it happen." "What exactly did you have in mind?" I outlined my plan, how we would continue gathering evidence, but with a new focus. I wanted to know everything about Andrew too, his routines, his weaknesses, his motivations. I wanted to understand what made him tick, and most importantly, I wanted to know if Becca was his only extramarital activity. Zoe hesitated. "That's veering into territory I'm not comfortable with. I agreed to document your wife's affair, not investigate a third party." "I'm not asking you to seduce him or entrap him," I clarified. "Just expand your awareness. If Becca mentions other women in his past, take note. If she expresses any insecurities about his fidelity to their infidelity, I want to know. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was becoming obsessed with the fidelity of my wife's affair. But instinct told me there was something there. Men like Andrew, powerful men who pursued married women, rarely limited themselves to just one conquest. Reluctantly, Zoe agreed to the modified arrangement. It didn't take long for my hunch to prove correct. Within 2 weeks, Becca confided in Maya about a troubling discovery. A text message on Andrew's phone from someone named Vanessa, clearly intimate in nature. When confronted, Andrew had dismissed it as an ex who wouldn't leave him alone. Becca had chosen to believe him. "She's having doubts," Zoe reported. "Not enough to end things, but the seed is planted." "Perfect," I said. "Keep watering it." Over the next month, Zoe carefully, subtly nurtured Becca's suspicions about Andrew. Never directly accusing him of anything, but asking just the right questions. "Don't you think it's strange he never lets you go to his actual condo?" Or, "I find it interesting he can always make time for you during work hours. I wonder how he explains those absences to his colleagues." Meanwhile, I threw myself into becoming the model husband. I brought home flowers for no reason, planned thoughtful date nights, listened attentively to Becca's stories about her day, stories I knew were censored versions of reality. I complimented her appearance, reminded her of inside jokes from our early years together, made love to her with an intensity that left her breathless and confused. "You seem different lately," she said one night as we lay in bed, her head on my chest. "More like when we first met." I kissed the top of her head. "Just remembering what matters," I said, the double meaning of my words a private joke only I could appreciate. Through Zoe, I learned that my renewed attentiveness was creating conflict for Becca. She'd actually cried during one of their yoga sessions, confessing that she felt torn between her passion for Andrew and her history with me. She said, and I quote, "Why couldn't Daniel have been this way before I met Andrew?" Zoe reported. "She's rewriting history to justify her actions, but your recent behavior is making that narrative harder to maintain." As our anniversary approached, I began planning what I privately called the reckoning. I reserved the penthouse suite at the Four Seasons, the same hotel where we'd spent our wedding night 15 years earlier. I commissioned a custom-made photo album, ostensibly of our life together, but with a twist that would become apparent. I bought an absurdly expensive bottle of champagne that we would never drink. Zoe continued her work, growing ever closer to Becca, becoming her primary confidant. The friendship had progressed to the point where Becca was sharing not just details about the affair, but her deepest insecurities, her childhood traumas, her professional disappointments. It was the kind of intimacy that usually takes years to develop, accelerated by Zoe's careful cultivation and Becca's desperate need for validation. 2 weeks before our anniversary, Zoe delivered what I considered the final piece of the puzzle, confirmation of my suspicions about Andrew. "He's seeing at least 2 other women," Zoe said, sliding a folder across the table to me. "One is single, a pharmaceutical rep who visits his hospital. The other is married, a nurse in pediatrics." I flipped through the documentation, text screenshots that Becca had shown Maya in tears, evidence she'd gathered herself after finally growing suspicious enough to check the secret apartment when Andrew claimed to be out of town. She'd found makeup that wasn't hers, wine glasses with 2 different lipstick marks. "How's she handling it?" I asked, surprised to find that despite everything, I still cared about Becca's pain. "Not well," Zoe admitted. She confronted him. He denied it at first, then minimized it, then turned it around on her, said she was hardly in a position to demand exclusivity given her marital status. "Classic," I said, though I took no joy in being right. And she ended it, or tried to. "He's not accepting it gracefully. Keeps texting her, showing up at her workplace. Yesterday, he waited outside the yoga studio. I had to create a diversion so Becca could leave through the back. This was an unexpected complication. Andrew had seemed so calculated, so controlled in all of Becca's descriptions. The idea of him becoming unstable, possibly dangerous, introduced a variable I hadn't planned for. Does he know about you? About Maya? He's seen me with her, but I don't think he views me as anything but a yoga friend." I've been careful to stay in the background when he's around. I nodded, relieved. Good. Keep it that way. And keep an eye on Becca. If he escalates, we may need to adjust the timeline. Our anniversary fell on a Saturday. For weeks, I'd been dropping hints about a special surprise, building Becca's anticipation. That morning, I presented her with a small jewelry box containing the key to our suite, along with a note instructing her to pack an overnight bag and meet me at the hotel at 7 p.m. Her eyes had filled with tears. Daniel, this is so thoughtful. If only she knew. While Becca was at her usual Saturday yoga class, with Zoe, of course, I made final preparations. I checked into the suite early, arranging everything precisely. The photo album on the coffee table, the champagne chilling, the thick manila envelope containing all the evidence of her betrayal, hidden for now. At 6:30, I texted Becca. Can't wait to celebrate 15 amazing years. You are the love of my life. She responded with a heart emoji. Just one. At 6:45, I received a text from Zoe. She's on her way, dressed up, nervous but excited. Good luck. At 7:10, there was a knock at the suite door. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection one last time, and opened it. Becca looked stunning. She'd had her hair done, subtle caramel highlights framing her face, the face I'd woken up next to for 15 years. She wore a deep blue dress I'd never seen before, one that highlighted her eyes. In her hands was a small gift bag. Hi, she said, a tentative smile playing on her lips. Hi yourself, I replied, stepping back to let her in. You look beautiful. She entered the suite, her eyes widening as she took in the expansive space, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the scattered rose petals leading to the bedroom. Daniel, this is... wow. Only the best for our anniversary. I guided her to the living area where champagne and hors d'oeuvres awaited. Shall we toast? The conversation flowed with surprising ease as we sipped champagne. We reminisced about our wedding day, about the birth of our children, about the small vacation cabin we'd purchased when I landed my first major contract. For anyone watching, we would have appeared to be the perfect couple celebrating a milestone. After our second glass, I gestured to the photo album on the coffee table. I had something special made for you. Oh, she reached for her gift bag. Should I give you yours first? No, I said, perhaps too quickly. Let's do mine first, please. She settled back, looking intrigued as I placed the album in her lap. The cover was elegant, embossed with our names and wedding date in silver script. Open it, I encouraged. The first few pages were exactly what one would expect. Our wedding photos, pictures of our first home, Becca pregnant with Ellie, family vacations, school events. Becca cooed appropriately at each memory. Then she turned to a page that made her freeze. It was a photograph of her and Andrew entering the downtown apartment building, the timestamp clearly visible, 3 months ago. She looked up at me, color draining from her face. Daniel, what? Keep going, I said softly. The next pages contained more damning evidence. Screenshots of text conversations, photos of secret meetings, transcripts of conversations where she disparaged our marriage, mocked my obliviousness, planned her deceptions. I don't understand, she whispered, her hands trembling. How did you? When did you? And then she turned to the final section. Photos of Andrew with other women, entering the same apartment building. Text messages he'd sent to his other paramours, using the same endearments, making the same promises. No, she said, shaking her head. No, this isn't. He told me those were lies. Are mine lies too? I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Did I lie about loving you? About building a life with you? About keeping my vows? Tears spilled down her cheeks, ruining her careful makeup. Daniel, please, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain 2 years of lies? Can you explain how you looked me in the eye day after day, accepted my love, slept in my bed, all while betraying everything we built? I made a mistake, she cried. A terrible mistake. But I ended it. I swear it's over. Only because you found out he was cheating on you, I corrected her. If he'd remained faithful to your infidelity, you'd still be with him. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not true. These past few months, the way you've been with me, I've remembered why I fell in love with you. I laughed, a hollow sound. That's the saddest part. I haven't been any different. I've always been this man. You just stopped seeing me. Becca stared at the album, at the undeniable record of her betrayal. How did you get all this? Have you been having me followed? This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The culmination of 10 months of planning, of pain, of calculating patience. No, I said. Not exactly. On cue, the suite door opened. Zoe walked in, still dressed as Maya in yoga pants and a loose sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Becca's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. Maya, what are you doing here? How did you? Her gaze darted between us as comprehension settled in. No, no, you can't be. Becca, meet Zoe, I said. My consultant. Zoe stepped forward, her professional mask firmly in place. I'm sorry, Becca. This isn't personal. Becca stood so abruptly that champagne sloshed from her glass onto the plush carpet. Not personal. Not personal. You pretended to be my friend. For months. You listened to my secrets, my fears. I trusted you. Like I trusted you? I interjected. 15 years of marriage, Becca. 2 children. And you threw it away for a man who couldn't even remain faithful to his infidelity. Becca turned to me, her grief morphing to fury. You hired someone to infiltrate my life? To manipulate me? What kind of sick game is this? It's not a game, I said. It's evidence gathering. For the divorce. The word hung in the air between us. Divorce. The dissolution of everything we'd built, the fracturing of our family unit, the admission of absolute failure. Becca sank back onto the sofa, her anger deflating into something closer to defeat. So that's it? You orchestrated this elaborate setup just to humiliate me before filing for divorce? Not just that, I corrected her. I needed to know everything. Who you really are. What our marriage really meant to you. Whether any of it was salvageable. And, she asked, her voice small, what's your conclusion? I stood and crossed to the window, looking out at the city lights scattered like fallen stars. That's the question, isn't it? What happens now? There was a long silence. Zoe, sensing the shift in energy, quietly gathered her things. I'll email you the final report, she murmured to me. Everything's documented as we discussed. After she left, Becca and I remained in our positions. Me by the window, she on the sofa, like pieces on opposite sides of a chessboard. I did love you, she finally said. I still do, in many ways. But something was missing, Daniel. For years, you were physically present, but emotionally elsewhere. Always thinking about the next project, the next client. So you found someone who paid attention. Yes, she admitted. It wasn't just physical. Andrew made me feel valued, interesting. When he looked at me, he really saw me. And the other women he was seeing? Did he really see them too? She winced. I was a fool. We both were. I turned back to face her. I should have noticed you were unhappy, should have been more present. That doesn't excuse what you did, but I wasn't perfect either. Becca looked up, surprise evident in her reddened eyes. That's not what I expected you to say. What did you expect? Rage, ultimatums, maybe even, she gestured around the suite, throwing me out of here in my dress with nowhere to go. Despite everything, I smiled slightly. Considered it, but dramatic gestures aren't really my style. No, she agreed, a ghost of fondness in her voice. They never were. I crossed the room and sat in the armchair across from her, close but not touching. I'm filing for divorce, Becca. There's no coming back from this. She nodded, tears welling again but not falling. I know. I'll be fair. More than fair, probably. But I want primary custody of the kids. They'll stay in the house with me. She started to protest, then stopped herself. You have all the leverage, don't you, with all this evidence? Yes, but that's not why I want custody. I want it because the kids deserve stability right now, and you, I chose my words carefully. You need time to figure out who you are and what you want. You can't do that while trying to maintain their routines, their activities. You've thought of everything. I've had 10 months to think about nothing else. We sat in silence for a moment. What about, she hesitated. What about Maya, Zoe? Was anything she told me true? Any part of her that was real? I considered the question. She's not really divorced. She doesn't actually have a sister in Seattle, but her observations about your yoga form were probably genuine. A surprised laugh escaped Becca, quickly stifled by a sob. God, I'm pathetic. No, I said and meant it. You're human, flawed, selfish at times, capable of terrible decisions, but also capable of growth. I have to believe that, or what was any of this for? Becca picked up her gift bag, the one she'd brought for our anniversary. Do you still want this? Seems absurd now. Sure, I said, oddly curious. Why not? She handed me the bag. Inside was a small box containing a watch. An expensive one, I noted with irony. The card read, "To my husband, time has only made my love for you stronger." I turned the watch over in my hands. We've always had timing issues, haven't we? Maybe in another life, she said softly. Maybe. I stood up. I've booked this suite for the night. You can stay if you want. I'm going home. Daniel, she called as I reached the door. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. Truly. I look back at my wife of 15 years, the mother of my children, the woman who had been my best friend and my greatest betrayer. I know, I said. Me too. And I was. Sorry for what we'd lost. Sorry for the pain our children would endure. Sorry for the years of deception, both hers and, in the end, mine. As I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, past houses where other families were having ordinary Saturday nights, watching movies, arguing over board games, leading unremarkable lives, I felt a strange sense of peace settling over me. Not happiness, not yet, but the beginning of healing. The charade was over. The truth, however painful, was finally in the open. And there was freedom in that, a foundation on which to build whatever came next. In the morning, I would begin the process of dismantling the life we'd built together. I would call my lawyer, start the paperwork, prepare to tell our children that their family as they knew it was changing. But tonight, I would sleep in our bed alone, without the weight of suspicion and surveillance and calculated performance pressing down on me. Tonight, I would simply breathe. And tomorrow would take care of itself. Becca moved out 3 weeks later into a small apartment closer to the hospital. Not to be with Andrew. That relationship had combusted spectacularly once all the deceptions were exposed, but to find herself, as she put it. The divorce was finalized in record time, largely due to Becca's lack of resistance to my terms. Whether out of guilt or genuine agreement with my assessment that the kids needed stability, she accepted weekend visitation and one dinner night a week. Ellie and Max took it hard, as children always do, especially Ellie, who at 13 was old enough to piece together parts of the adult drama, but not mature enough to process it. I never shared the full truth with them. They didn't need to hate their mother, only understand that sometimes relationships end. As for Zoe, I received her final report as promised, but never contacted her again. Her presence in our lives had served its purpose, but the methods we'd employed left a sour taste that lingered long after the satisfaction of revelation had faded. Life settled into new patterns. I scaled back my work hours to be more present for the kids. Becca found a position at a different hospital, started therapy, began the messy process of rebuilding herself outside the identities of wife and cheater. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder if things could have been different. If I'd confronted her after the first discovery, would our marriage have survived? If I'd been more attentive before Andrew, would she have been tempted at all? But these are questions without answers, roads not taken that fade into the fog of might-have-beens. What I know for certain is this: deception, no matter how justified it feels in the moment, exacts its price from deceiver and deceived alike. My elaborate scheme brought me truth, but not happiness. Not immediately. Happiness came later, in smaller moments. In Ellie making the volleyball team and looking for me in the stands during her first game. In Max finally conquering his fear of deep water during summer vacation. In Sunday morning pancakes that gradually stopped feeling like performances of normalcy and started feeling like genuine traditions again. And eventually in the slow, cautious connection with someone new. A divorced mother from Max's school who understood the complexities of rebuilt lives and blended families, who appreciated my architectural drawings and challenged my political views, and made me laugh in a way I'd almost forgotten I could. Becca found her way too, though not without stumbles. There was a brief, ill-advised reconciliation attempt with Andrew that predictably imploded, a phase of what she later called self-destructive liberation. But ultimately, she emerged stronger, more self-aware, a better mother for having faced her own flaws. Last month, at Max's birthday party, the first we'd managed to co-host civilly, she pulled me aside. "I never thanked you," she said quietly, as we stood watching Max blow out his candles amid the cheerful chaos of 10-year-old boys. I glanced at her, puzzled. For what exactly? For not destroying me when you could have. She looked down at her hands, turning her wedding ring, now worn on her right hand instead of her left. You had every reason to scorch the earth. The evidence, the leverage. You could have taken everything. I considered this as we watched our son open a gift, his face lighting up at a video game I knew would keep him up far too late on weekends. That was never the goal, I finally said. I know that now. She met my eyes directly for the first time in months. But at the time, in that hotel room, when I realized what you and Zoe had done, I thought it was the ultimate revenge plot. It started that way, I admitted. But revenge is like architectural plans that never get built. Perfect on paper, but ultimately just an exercise in imagination. A rueful smile crossed her face. Only you would make an architecture metaphor right now. We shared a brief, genuine laugh, perhaps our first since everything fell apart. "Daniel," she said after a moment, "I've been thinking about something you said that night, that I needed to figure out who I am. And I'm getting there, slowly." She gestured vaguely at herself. "Turns out there's a person under all those roles. Wife, mother, professional, lover. Someone I lost track of, somewhere along the way." Before I could respond, Ellie approached, her teenage skepticism evident as she observed our civil conversation. "Everything okay over here?" she asked, protective in that way children become when they sense the fragility of adult relationships. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Becca assured her. "Just talking about how grown-up your brother is getting." Ellie rolled her eyes but seemed satisfied, wandering back to the safety of her phone in the corner where she could observe the little kids without participating. "She's still angry with me," Becca murmured. "She'll come around. She's 13. Anger is the default setting." Becca nodded, then squared her shoulders slightly. "Well, I should help with the cake before Max decides to serve himself." As she walked away, I felt a strange lightness. Not closure exactly. I don't believe in such neat emotional packaging. But something like acceptance. We were two people who had loved each other, hurt each other, and were now finding our way towards something resembling peace. 6 months later, that peace was tested when Becca announced she'd met someone. His name was Thomas, a radiologist at her new hospital, divorced with a teenage daughter. She told me over coffee one afternoon after she dropped Max off from their weekend together. "I wanted you to hear it from me," she said, stirring her latte unnecessarily, "before the kids mention it. I appreciate that." I found to my surprise that I meant it. "Are you happy?" She considered the question seriously. "I'm cautious, taking it slow, making better choices." She looked up. "He knows everything about what happened, what I did, everything?" "Well, not the part about you hiring a friendship architect," she said with a small smile. "Some things are better left in the past." I nodded, understanding the grace being offered. We would not define each other by our worst moments. "What about you and Diane?" she asked. "Max mentioned you took her kids to the lake house." "It's good," I said simply. Different, but good. Becca nodded. Different is sometimes necessary. A year after our divorce, I received an unexpected email from Zoe. She was leaving her personal information consulting business, she wrote, pursuing a degree in psychology. She didn't apologize for her role in our story. Professionals rarely do. But she thanked me for showing her the power of truth, however painful, to ultimately heal. I never replied, but I kept the email. As for me, the firm continued to thrive. I designed a community center that won several sustainable architecture awards. Ellie started high school, finding her stride in debate club and environmental activism. Max discovered a passion for competitive swimming that consumed our weekends in the best possible way. And Diane, well, that story is still being written. Her daughter Lila and Ellie formed an unlikely friendship, bonded by their shared experience of family reformation. Her son Caleb and Max battle endlessly over video games. We've had tense moments and beautiful ones, false starts and unexpected connections. 2 years to the day after that confrontation at the Four Seasons, I found myself driving past the hotel. On impulse, I pulled into the parking garage, took the elevator to the lobby, and sat in one of those oversized armchairs, surrounded by the muted luxury that had been the backdrop to my elaborate reveal. My phone buzzed with a text from Becca. Ellie just told me about her debate team making nationals. So proud of her. You're doing a good job, Daniel. Simple words, but ones that would have been impossible in the raw aftermath of our separation. I thought about the man I'd been when I hired Zoe, consumed by betrayal and calculation. The elaborate lengths I'd gone to, orchestrating a false friendship, documenting every deception, planning the perfect moment of revelation. Had it been worth it? The months of living a double life, of matching lie for lie? I'm still not sure. But I know this, in the architecture of human relationships, sometimes we need to demolish before we can rebuild. The foundations might be damaged, the structures irreparable, but the land beneath remains. And on that land, with care and time, new structures can emerge. Different, perhaps simpler, but sometimes stronger for knowing what couldn't be sustained. As I left the hotel, I passed a woman who looked remarkably like Zoe entering with a suitcase. For a moment our eyes met, and there was a flicker of recognition, or perhaps just my imagination imposing meaning on a random encounter. Either way, I nodded slightly and continued on my way, thinking about the plans I needed to finalize for a new sustainable housing development, about picking up ingredients for dinner with Diane and the kids, about the parent-teacher conference on Thursday. Not perfect, not a fairy tale ending, but real, a life rebuilt with intention, with awareness of both strength and fragility. A life where trust is no longer taken for granted, but earned and verified, and all the more precious for it. That night, as I helped Max with his science project, a model of ocean currents that was threatening to flood my dining room, my son looked up suddenly. "Dad," he said with that directness only children possess, "are you happy now?" I paused, blue food coloring staining my fingers. "Yes," I said honestly. "Different than before, but yes." He nodded, satisfied, and returned to his project. Different than before, but yes. Asterisk. Thank you for listening to The Friendship Architect. If this story resonated with you, whether you've experienced betrayal, rebuilding, or the complex journey moving forward, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a moment where trust was shattered? How did you navigate the aftermath? What helped you rebuild? Every relationship teaches us something about ourselves, whether it endures or ends. I hope Daniel and Becca's story offered some insight into the messy, complicated nature of human connections and the possibility of finding peace, even after profound pain. If you enjoyed this narrative, please subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the depth and complexity of modern relationships. And don't forget to share with someone who might find comfort or perspective in knowing they're not alone in their journey. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most beautiful architectures arise from the most difficult reconstructions.